Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of AAA, All Angles Asked. My name is Ray Gage, and I'm here with my co host, D. Grant Smith.
Hello.
And we're excited to share whatever comes out in this conversation as we really don't script these conversations. So I hope you enjoy it. D,
See,
we always have something on our mind.
yeah, it seems like we had something on our mind a couple days ago when we said we were going to do another podcast episode. And it had to do with the idea of abundance and wholeness being synonymous with each other.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And so it's interesting because if I think we've done actually at least one, if not two, previous episodes where we talked about abundance
Hmm.
from a different angle.
Yeah. Different angle than what we're used to, like categorizing it with. Usually with abundance, it involves money and finances and or um, resources. Um, And one of the things that you and I both have been talking about is how when we try to quantify abundance, then we're coloring outside the lines, and that's not even what it's necessarily about. And or when we try to put a number to what abundance is, once a number is involved, it's no longer abundance.
Kind of like, you know, the things that are absolute. So if you think of the concept of absolute truth, what is truth? Well, the second you try to define it, it's no longer absolute. And the same applies for abundance is when you apply some type of a barometer or some type of a measuring stick or some type of a label or a definition to it, then it's no longer abundance. And abundance with the definition is abundance with a lens, and it's no longer abundance. I think we
Hmm.
were I think that's kind of what we were talking about, and I think we've actually had that. The lens has come up before as well. I don't remember if it was in relation to abundance specifically, but we have talked about the lens before as well.
Yeah, I don't remember. I think it's the lens has probably been. I want to say it's been a part of most of our conversations.
Yeah, and I do you remember what the question was that came up when we were discussing it that maybe you thought we would want to explore in this episode?
Yeah, you had left a message for me, or we had it. Uh, you said something that talked about, we were talking about separation and the illusion of separation. Separation from God, separation from ourselves, separation from each other. Um, and that biblical scripture talks about this, the Course in Miracles talks about this, other texts talk about it. But you used the word wholeness in talking about abundance, and I had not associated those two things as one before. But for you to say, when you said that abundance and wholeness are synonymous and they're the same thing, I'm like, what it did was it put the idea of wholeness in a greater context, in a clearer context for me. And I was like, well, I really want to explore the different angles of this idea because 7 years ago, I published a book that was about my journey from um, a very broken self-concept into learning how to love myself after going through divorce. And the title of the book is Be Solid: How to Go Through Hell and Come Out Whole. And I talk a lot about wholeness in that, but I realized that now 7 years later, my idea of wholeness was that it's a destination point instead of it being this ever evolving, ever realizing place. And I think abundance consciousness, Christ consciousness is that as well. Like there is a ongoing um evolution or uh, continual growth that's happening in that, because the idea that we as children of God, or as beings of God, or divine essence, or whatever, that we can be static and unchanging and unmoving. We can get to some sort of arrival place where there's nothing else to discover, nothing else to create, nothing else to grow and learn upon, and like that there's an end. Um, I think that's part of the illusion too. And so so we end up striving for that place instead of like, no, right now is that place. Like you before you hit record, we were talking about at a different point in the conversation about a feeling of accomplishment and peace and success, and that's an internal fulfillment, that's an internal realization, and I don't need anything external to me to feel fulfilled. If I buy into that notion, then I'm buying into the illusion, and then I'm co-facilitating the idea of separation from that already being my reality. And this is, by the way, this is something that I'm continuing to grow in every day, and God keeps reminding me, hey dude, like you've let go of this idea that you have to reach some sort of pinnacle of business success in order to have quote unquote made it, to be successful, quote unquote. And you're not there, and you don't want to be where you thought you wanted to be, and you're so happy now. And you realize you're so happy. You could have been happy before, but you're happy now. Your happiness is not contingent upon reaching some sort of business milestone. It's not contingent upon reaching some sort of relationship goal. It's not contingent upon anything external to you. It's a decision you make for yourself. And the same thing is true for wholeness. But it's an ever evolving, ever growing sort of thing. And so when you said to me in a conversation we had, I think on Wednesday, you drew this parallel or synchronicity between wholeness and abundance, then like that's been cleaning and clearing part of my own consciousness and my own understanding of something that I used to believe to be true. Absolutely. And I still hold it to be true, but like the truth is it's the truth that keeps on truthing,
So
to quote
it's
myself
the
again.
it's so maybe it's more like, would you say, would it be fair to describe it as these little t truth that is leading you deeper into the capital
Capital
T
T.
truth?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's, which is very cool. We talked about that in our conversation the other day as well, as far as the journey and the path, and that just because you're at a different path or someone else is at a different path than I am, on we're still on the same path,
Mm,
and that it just becomes a place where I can turn around and see, oh, hey, there, I can see where they are on the path because I was there. And I know because of that process how I got to where I'm at now.
mm,
Maybe if they're open and they're asking and they're questioning, I can help them get to where I am much more quickly than I did by myself, or
mm,
than they could by themselves. But I don't look at it as like it's not a it's not the same as the ego's definition of striving. Right? I'm not
mm,
looking for something outside of myself to complete me. As That's the whole economy of striving that I call it. I call it the economy of striving. That's the economy of striving in a nutshell. It's the belief that I am not enough, which
mm,
is the limiting belief. That's the original limiting belief. And I mean, you can use the Bible as a reference point for that as well. Like, if you eat the fruit, there's a promise. You eat the fruit and you can become like God. Well, I had to believe that I wasn't. Well, then I'm believing that I wasn't enough. Not believing I'm not enough is believing that I'm no longer whole for some reason.
Yeah, that was it. So that was the statement that you made that made me go, oh crap, that redefines the terms.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So, and that actually, so redefine the terms. I love the way that you put that, because it's also another way that I say it is questioning the foundation.
Hmm.
And redefining the terms is what happens when you question the foundation, or when you realize that the foundation that you thought was true, that you thought was sure, that you thought was solid, isn't. And so then what do I have to do now to get to a more solid foundation than the one that I thought I was standing on?
Wow. Yeah.
And the struggle for most people with that is they don't want to question the foundation.
Hmm.
Is
Well, because that foundation's old and it was probably given to us by people that we trusted and that we had, or a system that we trusted and had been instituted in the framework of our existence for generations, if not eons.
exactly. But at the same time, I'm willing to argue about everything I've built on top of it.
Hmm.
But if
Why?
everything I've built on top of it is is based on a false foundation, then everything I've built on top of it is also false. And I go around arguing my side or my perspective or point of view on something that's built on a false foundation with somebody who's arguing the same thing from a different lens on the same foundation. So I have two false points of view arguing with each other.
So what you're also describing, though, require like the foundation of you having that willingness to question your own foundation. We're digging way deeper into core root stuff, but like that requires an insane amount. No, it requires an insane amount of humility and like capital S self-respect, which is kind of reflective in a sense of what you and I talk about. There's the capital T truth and there's the lowercase t truth, the personal and then the universal. And so there's the higher self and then there's the what do you call it, lower or just human self. But it what you're describing here of like I'm willing to you saying I'm willing to question my own foundations and then question those and then question that and question everything I built upon it. Like what for myself I can only imagine like or reflect on like okay, I've been broken tons of times. But in my brokenness, getting to a place of asking questions instead of projecting blame and hurt and reasons for like there being some sort of wrongdoing, kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier that before this conversation about love keeping no record of wrongs. But the evolution of my own soul to get to a place where I am willing to accept the fact that maybe I bought into an absolute lie and I built not just built beliefs on top of it, but I built uh, livelihood, I understanding like self concepts on top of that, and then looked at my experience or looked at my surroundings, and at some point the common denominator in like broken relationships, for instance, at some point the common denominator is me because those people don't know each other, but if their behavior and actions towards me are the same, then what is that saying about me in the reflection that I'm experiencing? I'm responsible for that. So, uh, going back to what the point I'm trying to make here is like it takes humility for me to be able to say to get to a place where I'm not projecting hurt or blame onto somebody else and I'm willing to question my own self concepts, my own belief systems around things. And that's what I'm hearing you say when you're saying, okay, but I'm going to question everything and not continue to build on principles and ideas that are not rooted in wholeness. So I'm curious, like, what is it a realization for you that you have a willingness to question everything, or has your life experience kind of shown you some things where like to where you're not blaming yourself and you're not like self-loathing when you're questioning your own core belief systems, but there is this deeply humble willingness to admit fault or just question question things that at one point in time you held as absolute truth, but like now you're willing to like let go of that and hold it with open hands.
I think probably maybe this will be the I'll answer it this way, and then you can tell me if it's how that answer sounds in relation to the question that you asked, or if I need to go a different direction with it. Most people, and I say all of us, like, because it really is all of us until we get to the point where we don't do it. And I'm not at that point yet. And there's probably been a few people over the eons of history that got to that point, but very few. And that is, we all just want to be right.
Mm,
And I mean, we'll die on hills that we have no business even being on,
mm,
because we're trying to protect something false. We think we're trying to protect something true because that's the lie we believed. We don't realize until we realize it that we're not trying to protect anything true because the foundation was false. If I if my default operating system is I need to be right, is that humbleness or is that pride?
right.
So really everybody walks around saying that they are humble, they're trying to be humble, but they need to be right. They're just full of pride.
Mm,
You're not humble because you say you're humble. That's
right.
not what humility is.
No.
Humility, in the deepest sense of the word, is living in the truth of what you are,
Mm,
not in the truth of who you think you are and are trying to protect. That's proud. That's pride.
mm,
I don't think anyone would say, I mean, there's probably people that would say it, but they would get laughed at, that Jesus was proud, for example.
mm,
There was nothing he couldn't do. He knew what he was. He knew why he was here. He knew what his goal was. He knew what he was supposed to accomplish, and he did it. There was no pride involved in it. It was humble.
mm,
Is it more proud for me to live in the truth of what I was created for, or is it more prideful for me to not live in the truth of what I was created for? So the reality is humble is living in the truth of what I was created for. That's humility.
mm.
I'm not trying to impose a different will on top of that. Imposing a different will on top of that is pride.
Yeah.
I tell people this a lot. I want to be wrong. I don't need to be right. I'd rather find out that I was wrong about something, because then it gives me the opportunity to see the crack in the foundation and figure out how to think differently.
But does that happen often?
Does it happen often that what happens often is that it does happen quite often that I realize I was wrong about something.
Mm,
And I mean, it happens, when I say it happens less and less frequently now, it's just because that it's like every time now that something enters my awareness, that the voice inside of me tells me something. And then I'll go and look. I'll go and like, hey, just as an example, there's a a scripture passage, and the voice in my head says, "Hey, go look at that scripture passage and look specifically at this word, and what that word meant in the root, and how it changes the entire passage when you
Mm,
change the translation to what the original intent was."
mm,
There was a time when if the that I wouldn't have even heard that voice. If somebody had even suggested that there was anything quote unquote wrong with the translation of the Bible that
mm,
I believed to be true wasn't, I would have burned them at the stake. So,
mm.
and not literally, but I mean that's what people
Yeah.
used to do, right? You're a heretic. You're
Mm,
questioning the
yeah.
inerrant word of God. No, that's not what I'm doing. I'm being told by God to question the interpretation,
Mm,
not His word, but the interpretation of it. So that I love now. I those times when that happens now are exciting for me because I'm figuring out, hey, I was wrong about that, and what I see now differently is so much closer to love than fear.
mm.
That give me more. Just give me more of that. I've been through things in my life that would have knocked a lot of people on their rear ends and they would never been able to get up.
Mm,
And I can talk about that at some point if we want to do that. It's no different. I mean, most people have and I'm not saying that. So a lot of these things that I talk about, I'm coming from having been through similar experiences to what a lot of people have been through.
yeah.
And there's it's a perception problem. I got knocked on my ass once and I cried out to God and I heard him answer me in a voice that was as clear as you talking to me on this podcast. And since that time, my perspective changed. I'm still in the world of perception. So it's just a different lens that I'm looking through now. The removal of lenses is the ultimate goal, but the removal of lenses is not my move to make. It's what source or God does when I get close enough to the end of perception.
Mm.
So that's does that answer the question? Maybe it was a little bit different
Well,
answer than
I think I also took way too long in asking a simple question by
okay.
trying to qualify it too much, and that's just something I'm discovering about myself
Yeah.
continually because I do the same thing with Stephanie. I think she wants me to just get to the point, dude. What is the point? I'm like,
What's the
oh,
point? What's the point?
but I need to qualify it first. No.
Yeah. Uh, I just get excited. I just get excited to talk about it because it's so much more. It's a very freeing place to be. Uh, it's a happier place to be. It's a more peaceful place to be. Which is funny because it's the opposite of what the ego will tell you, right? You don't question anything, right? If you That's going to
Mm.
lead you to places where you can't be peaceful. That's going to lead you to unhappiness. That's going to lead you to the opposite of where it actually leads you. So people are afraid.
And if you question it, then you're not faithful to the thing that you believe, which is crazy too. Like, and I think that kind of ties into what you're saying. Like, no, I want to question this because if it's absolute crap, then it's good that I don't build on anything on it anymore.
Hmm.
But there's something that wow, well, so Neville talks about this too. Because we can create assumptions based around things we actually don't want, and then be faithful to those negative assumptions and experience the opposite of our desires. Because it's got it like, so I'm gonna reference one of his infamous quotes. Um, it's what he calls the law of assumption. An assumption, though false, meaning if you believe something or you assume something, even though you haven't seen tangible proof of it yet, if you persist in that assumption, it will harden into fact. And I can look at every aspect of my life and go, oh, well, that's not just true for the good stuff that I've wanted, that I've chosen to have faith and believe in until it's come into pass. It's also true for the crazy crap that I don't like. So that goes back to responsibility of like, who's responsible for this thing? Who is it pride that I'm going back to what you're saying? Is it pride that I'm operating out of, or is it real humility? Because if it's fear that I don't want something to take place, but I've already believed and I've already assumed that that's the truth. Like for instance, if I okay, I don't know if it's going to show because of the way my deal is. You can't see it. Okay. I've got the background blur, but you can't see. So
Oh,
this
is that
book,
the train?
yeah. So this is the second proof copy of my upcoming novel that I'll publish on my birthday this year, The Legend of Shiloh Thatcher, the Man with the Golden Guns. Um, if I assume, and I'm afraid of people not liking this, the people I haven't met, or even you, because I've shared a version of the manuscript with you. If I tell myself this story, Ray's gonna tell me all the reasons why this book sucks, and he's gonna have all kinds of like, there's all kinds of holes in this book. There's all kind of holes in the story, and he's gonna tell me that I need to redo it and I don't need to publish it. If I assume that to be true, and I hold fast to that assumption before you and I have conversations about it, then I'm creating that version. I'm creating the possibility of that happening. A negative assumption can turn itself into some kind of reality that I don't want to experience. But if I allow myself to change that story and question that story, or ask myself, is that true, dude? Is that the truth? Is that the truth of what Ray would tell me, even if he felt that way? Would he, find a way to be encouraging about it, or like lead me in a direction of improving the story or improving the book in a way that benefits me? And B, is that actually true? No, it's not. So why am I continuing to tell myself this story and buy into this assumption? So the point that I'm trying to make here, without too much qualification and doing the same old thing again, is like there's a thing about we can hold tight in faith to something that's the opposite of what is good. And if we don't question that, if it's the opposite of what we want to experience, then why in the hell are we believing in its truth? And why are we staying faithful to that negative belief instead of questioning it? And I think that ties back into this is why we question things. And I think it ties into your point that you made a minute ago of like you don't have to be right, you want to be wrong. Because if you're wrong, then you can let go of prideful things, you can let go of non things that are not in alignment or in agreement with the wholeness that you are and the alignment that you have with God. You can let all that stuff go and no longer buy into the illusion. Does that
Yeah,
make sense? Have I tied that together fairly well?
absolutely. For me, it did, and I'm sure for some of our listeners, it probably did as well. The and that as you were talking, of course, sometimes I think of passages of scripture and how the way we've been taught them has been distorted, and when we realize what the truth can mean, and the one I'm going to mention here isn't even one where I've done a word study on it. It's pretty cut and dry. I mean, like you don't, for example, I don't need to do a word study on judge not.
Hmm.
I mean, that's pretty cut and dry. The another one is and I might get it wrong, but I think it's at the end of Malachi where it says, "And finally, brethren, what does the Lord your God require of you? But to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God."
Hmm.
It doesn't say walk humbly with your fellow man.
Oh, wow.
And we've talked about this before in offline conversations. Is so many times we don't pay attention to what's not said. Like, it
Mm,
doesn't say walk humbly with your brother or your sister or your pastor or your wife or your teacher or your whatever, fill in the blank. It doesn't
mm-hmm,
say walk humbly with your fellow man. It says walk humbly with your God.
mm,
And that's kind of goes right along with the reframing that we're discovering here in this conversation and looking at humbleness or humility from a different angle.
mm,
And if it's man that told me this is what I have to believe because this is what's true, to me, that's the first reason why I need to question it.
mm. Yeah.
Not the first reason why I need to believe it. It's the first reason why I need to question it.
Mm. Okay.
But we do build up in our minds, and I don't even know if using the word mind is correct here, because at some point we'll have a conversation about that. But that if the thought process that's running in the background is based on I am not enough, and that's what happens to us most of the time, because that's the thought process that you were describing when you were talking about, what's Ray going to think if I about my book,
Mm,
and but that came from fear
mm-hmm,
that there was somebody was going to see something wrong, and the like, oh, you know what, they pulled back the curtain, there's the wizard,
mm-hmm. Exactly.
it's all just a ruse, and that got figured out. Somebody tore off the costume and saw what was really here.
Mm-hmm.
That's how most of us operate our lives, is the identity that we've built for ourselves is just a costume. It's inventory. It's not who we are or what we are in
Mm.
truth. It's what we believe ourselves to be, and then how we decide to project that to other people. And that's where that thought process comes from, is that there's something wrong with me. Well, the thought that there's something wrong with me is not a thought from wholeness.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
It's not a thought from abundance. Well, if it's not a thought from abundance, then it's a thought from where? Scarcity.
Scarcity. Yeah.
So every belief that we have that is based on the foundation that I am separate, and because I am separate, I'm not enough, is a false belief.
And it needs to be questioned.
And it needs to be questioned. That's why I get so excited when I find out that what I thought was true was not.
Mm.
That most people, that thinking about questioning what they believe is a scary, scary proposition. But it when they actually do it, the doors that it opens up and the way that things become more clear is the opposite of what they were afraid of.
Yeah, because clarity isn't scary. It's freeing.
It's freeing.
I say, as I'm saying that, I'm like, there's a part of me that's like, no, it's kind of scary sometimes. So I think that when ego is at the helm, clarity is scary.
Right. And that's there's it's not a matter of right or wrong. It's just recognizing that that's the operating system that's our default operating system.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, you're not going to hell because you don't want the discomfort of questioning. Right? You're probably keeping yourself in hell by not questioning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, tell me your life feels like heaven, not hell,
Mm.
if you're
Yeah,
living in fear.
exactly.
So but that's another probably 14 or 15 episodes. But
And chapters in your upcoming book?
But there is one of the chapters in my book actually talk about the uh, what you mentioned before, that the longer you believe something to be true, the more true it becomes for you.
Hmm.
And that doesn't just happen on an individual level, it happens on a collective level as well.
Absolutely.
And you think about, so if the collective level is humanity as a whole believing the same wrong thing, how much more power is there in that?
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean it's the right thing. It can be completely the opposite of the right thing. If it's believed by all of humanity, that doesn't make it right.
No, but it does exponentially increase the power of that belief.
Exactly. Exponentially. So you have, you know, that I I believe a certain way, and I find somebody else that believes that way. Well, now I can start a group, right? We can start a group. We can start talking about that. Well, now all of a sudden, I get more and more people involved in it, and now I have a group of families that becomes enough for me to have a country that I think I need borders around, because the people outside of these borders don't believe the same way. Well, now I do that enough times, and now I have reasons to have beef with those people that live next to me. Well, now we're fighting over stuff, and I need your land, and you need to be dead. It
Well, you said that as you started saying it, I'm like, oh, but this isn't just like present day. I'm thinking about this historically.
mm-hmm.
So then you've got talking about eons, you've got eons of generations of belief systems passed down from grandparent to parent to child, and then onward for hundreds, thousands of years. That talking about the exponential power of that belief system. Now that bedrock, though faulty and untrue in the capital T true sense, is still being perpetuated as capital T truth.
Now apply that to our last episode that we did, where we talked about the dream narrative.
Yeah.
How much more powerful is the dream? It's
Well, and as you say that, now I'm like, well, here's one thing that's cool about these conversations, Ray. Um, as a storyteller, I find synchronicities and syncopations in movies as ways as illustrations of the life experience of us as humans, me as an individual human being. And what you just shared there about the dream, how much more powerful is the dream? I'm like, oh, that's the Matrix. Oh, no wonder it was so cool that Neo decided to take the red pill. And also so cool was it that like there's other people that had woken up, but him waking up and not only waking up but choosing to like take on this other aspect of divine consciousness and go back into the matrix to set people free throughout the course of the whole thing, like, oh, now that makes more sense to me. And so the whole dream state is the matrix, is the three-dimensional world that we live in and we think is the only reality, but it's not, because it's that well, the framework of our existence is contingent upon, like what we just said, the belief systems of the collective consciousness and the historic collective consciousness, and our willingness as people who are in the process of awakening, or maybe we already have become awakened. But I don't know about you. When I've been in a deep sleep, it takes me a little while to get my bearings, to come back into
Mhm.
whatever I call a conscious state. And maybe spiritual consciousness is similar to that. But like to look at to look at the things around us and go, is this the reality that I have created? And is this the reality that I choose to believe in? So now I'm going to pivot a little bit. Um, Einstein said that one of the most important questions we can ever ask ourselves is, do I choose to believe that I live in an abundant universe or a universe of scarcity? Do I choose to believe, now whether or not do I choose to believe that I live in a generous universe, a universe that takes care of me, and a universe that is kind? Or do I choose to believe that I live in a hostile universe that wants to take from me? And we see both of those choices played out all over the place. And in trying to figure out how some people seem to live a life of ease, where things just work in their favor, and you call them lucky, or you call them blessed, or yeah, everything always is going their way. It's unfair. Or to people that live in perpetual victim state. Either way, that's a belief system and a series of truths that they have held to be as absolute in their sense of consciousness, self-concept, whatever you want to call it. And that's an unquestioning, a non-questioning, versus the people that have a different belief system, and there's a free flow, there's an ease, there's a happiness, there's a contentment, there's a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment and purpose and joy that is independent of everything external. I know I just covered a whole lot of ground in one little thing, but I kind of have a tendency of doing that.
But that's great because neither one of us knows, or needs to know really, what is going to land for someone listening. So it's good that we kind of cover different angles of it as well. That's kind of the purpose, part of the purpose for the podcast, and even the name is, we're exploring a different angle. So and sometimes we do that. We do multiple angles when when we do that. So I don't know. Was there a?
I don't think I had a question in there. I think I was trying to
Yeah, I was just
so
trying to
here's
think.
here's the funny thing. I don't even know what my intention was. Ah, just feedback. There we go.
Yeah, as you were, so I had been thinking about this the last few days because we've talked about this before. We talked about it the last episode. We talked about the awakening within the dream.
Mm.
And what is the term that we use to describe someone who is awake in a dream?
I'm thinking of Inception now.
Well, the term that I hear associated with being awake
Oh,
in a
lucid.
dream is lucid
Mm.
dreaming.
Yeah.
It's not lucid waking.
Ooh. Ah. Oh, look at that sleight of hand. Okay.
And because I've said that to you before too, as I started to think to myself, you know, can you be awake? And if you're awake in a dream, you're still in the dream. So are you awake or are you still in the dream? So what do you call it when you're awake in a dream? Well, you call it lucid dreaming. You don't call it lucid awakening. It's still part of the dream narrative, just a realization of you're closer to you're less asleep. Let's put it that way. Right
Mm.
now, you see things differently. Like you mentioned, when you're in a deep sleep, really deep sleep, sometimes it can take a while for you to feel like you came completely out of it. And then even after you wake up, you still feel like you got hit by a truck sometimes, right? And but if I'm so really it's not stages of awakeness as much to me. I'm just saying that this is kind of like where I'm at right now with this. I'm not saying this is the answer. The Where I'm at right now with it is it feels like it's not so much a stages of awakeness as much as it is a stages of less asleep, more or less asleep. So the depth of my sleep is different than it is
Hmm.
because you're either asleep or awake. If you're awake, you're not asleep anymore. But if you're still in the dream, but you're awake in the dream, we call it lucid dreaming. So that's just like, so I see you're puzzled by it, and that's fine.
No, 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 no.
I'm just sharing something that came to me recently.
So I'm gonna question that.
Perfect.
I'm questioning whether or not you're awake or asleep. Because I'm seeing it as like these two orbs, sleepiness and wakefulness. And if I'm either in this orb or I'm in this orb, and it's absolute, then they don't intersect and they don't cross each other. But what if there's times where wakefulness crosses over and blends into sleepiness? And there's the lucid part because it's like those diagrams where like you have a circle here and a circle here, and then there's a spot in the middle where the two kind of do this, like a figure eight or a
Hmm.
infinity symbol. There's a little spot in the middle where it's shared from both sides. What if that's part of this too? What if part of the lucid dreaming slash lucid waking is where the dream state and the awake state commingle in some form or fashion, and there's a coexistence between the two realms.
The and maybe I'm not discounting it. I would throw this into the mix as we're thinking about it is that the dream is not a dream if you're awake. So if that's true, then what would we call? And again, I'm not challenging what you're saying. I'm throwing another angle into it for us to consider. If so we've talked about before, like the opposite of like false is not the opposite of true with a capital T. Like, true with a capital T is the absence of anything other than truth.
Right.
So light is not the opposite of darkness. Light is the absence of darkness. The is awake the absence of the dream,
Or is it the opposite?
or
That's
is
the
it the opposite? So, and I don't know that. I'm asking from that perspective.
well, so I'm as we're talking about this now, I'm also thinking of it's kind of like the is it Proverbs or Ecclesiastes that song was derived. There's a time to be born, a time to die, a time to reap, a time to sow, a time to all that stuff,
Yeah.
a time to sleep and a time to wake. Like, is that part of this whole thing too? Because we're not staying asleep like in our day-to-day lives, we're not staying asleep 24 hours and then staying asleep in another 24 hours and staying asleep in another 24 hours. Like there's a waking up point. And then from a consciousness standpoint, there's a sleeping time and then there's a waking time. And then in our awakefulness, we still realize that there's still a part of us that's sleeping because the awakening hasn't fully come into its completeness. So is part of this evolution as well.
And I don't know. And I when you're saying that, I'm thinking of if I'm telling a story and I add something to the story, then I'm still telling a story. So the story is still happening from within the story. It's not happening from outside the story.
Hmm.
It and so I'm wondering, like, how does that apply to this as well? So if I'm choosing, like when we were talking before about foundations, like if I'm choosing from a false foundation and I'm arguing a belief that's built on a false foundation, then there's no way for the belief to be true if the foundation is false.
Hmm.
Well, how does that apply? Right. So is it the dream? It's either the dream or it's not the dream. And because if it's from within the dream, then it's still the dream.
So
So that's what and I think this is a great conversation for us just because we're both kind of at the point where it's like, hey, this is fascinating. Hopefully it's as fascinating to the people that are listening as it is to me.
At the same time, if it's not, that's okay too.
No, exactly. But I love these conversations because it's like, okay, cool, because okay, this is what I was thinking. But if that wasn't true or wasn't the truth, I'm okay with that. Like I want to know like there has to be a way for this to feel like truth, not false, and I'm okay with it
Mm,
if the way that I was thinking about it is sometimes I get an aversion to using the word wrong even, right? So if the way I was thinking about it was wrong, I'm fine with that. I'm okay with that. I told you that
mm,
before because then that opens up another avenue to look at not just that thing differently.
mm. Yeah.
But that's why it's so fun to question.
Does this feel like a good place to put a bookmark or a bookend in and call it a day, or what are you feeling?
Yeah, that's fine. We don't really need to resolve anything. That's not what the point is. So
Yeah.
if you were looking for a resolution in this episode, I apologize.
Oh, but you don't live in a guilty
No,
world.
exactly. I don't live in a guilty world. That is the truth. So yeah, so I guess I don't apologize, but the point of these episodes is not necessarily to provide you with a resolution.
Hmm. It's to ask more questions.
It's ask more questions, be more open to possibilities that outside of the awareness that you thought you were living in because of what you
Hmm.
were told by someone else, and think about it for yourself.
Right on. I did want to say, referencing my Western novel, that I've had a realization that you and I's conversations are, I think, influential in my own writing because inside the character dynamic of this story is the main character and his closest friend Clarence, and all he wants to do is get back home and have another conversation with Clarence. And he looks forward to it. And I look forward to these conversations when we get to have them.
Oh, absolutely. I understand what you're talking about because I have had the opportunity to read a lot of the book, at least the manuscript that you sent me, so I know what you're talking about. So yeah, I agree 100%.
So
And
thank you, Ray.
yes, and thank you, Dee, and thank you I really hope for everyone that they can find that someone that that
Mm,
that they can have those conversations with and not feel
likewise.
like they need to choke or throat punch when they're finished.
Yeah, exactly.